Hello and welcome back to Have Your Say, one-on-one shadow boxing. Today my guest at WTV's studios, Al Wade. And we're talking about law reform. What make you think, Al, seriously think about law reform in WA, and why do we need that? We got some points mentioned in the first half, but what made you, as Al, start think about the law reform and the need of law reform in WA?
Well, when I had an issue with the judicial system, or the way it was my case was handled, I realised I've got no rights to complain. I've got no rights to be heard.
After judgment made?
After judgment made.
Because before that, everyone heard you, even if you don't want it to.
That's right. Then I looked into it, and then because that judge retired, that's it. He doesn't work for us anymore. Say you've been on the phone, you've run someone over. That person's been, it costs a lot of money and all that sort of other stuff. You go and take him, you say, I'm going to make a complaint, and he says, well, I've handed in my driver's licence, I don't drive anymore, you can't touch me.
That's interesting.
Nice analogy, but it's fact.
Yes. If we can do that, we all became sort of proxy judges.
But they allow themselves to do that.
So they got total immunity.
Immunity, and they govern pretty much on themselves, right?
So how do you want to see a judge exist in WA? With not immunity, just being a lay person, and anyone can, offend them without them defending themselves? Or what is the dynamic of the situation you envisage?
Well, the situation put me into the realisation we don't have rights or an avenue to have accountability for what people do to us or all that sort of stuff. Incompetence, whatever. So on looking at that, I was in denial. I was like, no, this can't possibly be. We're WA, we're Australians. We must be number one on the list at the ILC. But we're not. But what it did open my eyes up was to the horrible fact there is no oversight. There is no committee where you can make a complaint. There is no due process. As stated in this, and I'll read this one to you, right? It doesn't make sense how we can have a system of legality where you're meant to be heard, the right to be heard, and put your case forward.
If you are
but you're not allowed.
If you're muted.
If you're muted, the irony of it, the hypocrisy, it's quite a weird thing when you think about it. Now, as I said, I was quite in denial about this sort of thing.
Yes.
What the hell? The aspect of accountability for a person who concerns about the conduct of a judge should be a proper means by which raise those concerns and have them addressed. It's our fundamental right. It's in our legislation. But when we do that, so complaints against judiciary, dealing with complaints. We're talking WA here.
Yes.
Changes have been made in eastern states. There is no dealing with complaints. There is no legislation prescribed how complaints against the West Australian judiciary are to be lodged, investigated or dealt with, save for the removal of a judge from office and provisions. If you want to have a judge removed, he sent people to jail for crimes they didn't commit, you've actually got to get a parliament sitting from lower and upper house to have that judge sacked. They have a tenure for life, to the age of 70.
Until their retirement age.
Until they turn 70, that's their retirement age. And that's the problem about it. When we look at number 50, to have those sort of things like the United States, okay? There's a case where there was a municipal judge, a magistrate, and he was sending children away, it was like the age of 9, to child detention centres. This was just last year.
Yeah.
Then they found out, the people started going, all the parents, geez, they go to school, there's no one left in school. They're all being sent off to do 9 months for graffiti. So they went and found out what's going on with this judge. He was getting kickbacks by the private jail to send kids there.
To get the numbers.
So they had a...
But that's America.
So they had
the paradise of freedom.
Yeah, they had that system where people like myself can raise issues and have it done in front of everyone. Not being allowed to go and speak to the Chief Justice or have a tribunal or have a committee an independent committee where I can stand there and say, here is my evidence. And someone talks back to me. Most of the problems with complaints that are being held that were in this paper are people not understanding, like myself, as a layman's term. I was just a dumb truck mechanic and not a very good one either. So I didn't understand how this happened. I didn't understand why it happened. I mean, my lawyers left me at the gate. I didn't even know what a caveat meant. I thought it was a swear word. I'm a layman's dude. So a lot of complaints there are, oh, I'm complaining because of this. Yeah, they are minor and trivial. But when you think about taken away from the decision and you look at the person who made the decision, that's where you've got to have that independence, that committee that tallies up every 12 months.
What's happened in the courts?
Right, well, hold on, mate. Out of the last 12 decisions, you've had 9 of them overturned by the appeals court. Come and sit in our office for a bit. I know if I do that at work, I'm sacked. Right?
Because the car not going to be driven by anyone.
They act with total immunity. In the eastern states and that, we're the only state left, pretty much the only thing in the whole world, really, out of the top 50, that we don't have a system where any judicial members, be it the master, the registrar, to a magistrate, or even to make a complaint to the chief magistrate, you've got to go to the Attorney General's office, who will make the complaint back to the Chief Justice's office. Then they send you back a letter saying we can't do anything about it, you've got to go to a lawyer, and then it's just a vicious little cycle.
So like
when we're in...
Yeah, like they're living behind a barricade and no one can touch anyone.
That's right.
Because you couldn't go, and no doors, no windows, no nothing.
If you want to go for a removal of a judge, you've got to go through Parliament, lower and upper house. Yet that's the point. If we allow people to act with total immunity and total impunity, okay, people that understand, or when they do understand, they get horrible bosses. Arrogance breeds ignorance. Ignorance stops you from understanding. What you don't understand, you'll look through your arrogance to see your own self-righteousness. It is a very simple thing. They are human beings. And when you get, and as some of the reports have said, like from the United States or to England, there are sociopaths that get into that position. Now, our little system here in WA, I mean, they're always nephews and nieces of some other person or a referendum judge. They're a very close-knit, tight thing. They say there's a difference between power and integrity. When you question it...
I heard that before.
When you question it, you've got no avenue to follow up that question. We're number 50 in the world because of a reason.
El, I got a good news for you. Our parliament and the politicians working on the same basis. They're giving themselves immunity.
Wonderful.
They can make decisions in anything, environment, law, anything, but forever they could not be questioned and they could not be liable. At least we know transparency is there, because we know, like with the judgment, you got it in your hand, you go to jail, you know you got a judgment. Politicians making law, we know the law is made, but they also immune. They made that into a law to be immune. How's that? Where is that puts the democracy in the list?
Okay, just on that point, all right, about, that comes down to, you'll say your separation of powers. It's so you can act without fear or favour or being pushed into something, be it by the public or anyone else.
Yes.
So that's where they want to separate that thing for, say, the courts. We don't want to be pressured. We don't want, we don't want people to know about things. Move along, nothing to see here. Thank you, Bob Brady. So that going to the Parliament, that raises hair on my heads. Okay. So when it does come to that, it is very clear that that separation of power is what it's for. It's a very simple thing. So people can act without the fear of pressure, influence, having some people just coming up to you on the street, work colleagues saying, what are you doing? It's so that you can make a clear and honest path and have that question. But when it's used for something like parliamentarians pushing stuff through, what are we going to do? Go back to the 80s? Going to get a couple more Bondies, going to a couple more Scafies?
They already got them, just not that visible as before. Not discovered because of $4 billion not discovered to vanish. So yes, we are. I don't think much has changed since the 80s in the Wild West. We got worse and worse caliber politicians governing us, and they say we got politicians what we deserve because we're not paying enough for them to get the quality.
I don't know any other CEO that gets $350,000 for the rest of their life for only serving 4 years or 3 years.
And couldn't be sacked when
And
he
can't be
spends
sacked.
or her spends, the 4 years, because they are just not responsible men. So how do you want to have an independent, transparent, responsible judicial system when the whole system is the same?
What their reasonings and rationings behind this is, and it's quite disturbing. It doesn't go into too much, but it's
Okay.
what's not said that is said. I mean, the Kiwis are even doing a lot better than us.
How is that? They got more sheep.
They just got an open thing. Like the proposal through this thing is establishment of judicial commissions. Okay? So a proposal, the Commission proposes a Judicial Commission to be established in Western Australia, generally based on the Commission operating in New South Wales. I said about New South Wales, it's an independent board. You go there and they overlook things, right? They held people accountable, not just the decision, but why the decision was made, who made that decision. And they mark little books down. They put a little cross against your name. If anything sparks up, that's when they start going to the
How
Royal
long they
Commission.
got that system?
They started in 1985, but then it really ramped up towards 2005 or something like that. It's quite in depth on this one here.
But you see, that didn't change New South Wales' corrupt system in politics.
Getting the law right for the victims. Because if
Yes.
you don't, and you become a victim of that, and it's washed away and you've got no avenue or anything, you're still a victim sitting on the couch. We need that transparency. We need those commissions in our system. Especially in WA, we're the wild, wild west. It just amazes me.
I think, Al, the answer is still the same. We got a perfect system in WA. We don't need to change, and we don't need your law reform. Or do we?
My law reform?
Or a
You mean the
suggestion.
Attorney General's law reform?
The Attorney
Question?
General has
Exactly
law
right.
reform. So we don't need law reform in here, and that's the reason why we don't need it. But I think you're right, we need to do something. And I wish you good luck for your fight to stand up for the right thing and for the right thing to be done in a law reform. To follow not just New South Wales, but follow the world, and not stand behind Liberia and Egypt. Thank you for being here. And don't forget, next week, same time, same channel. Have your say, one-on-one shadow boxing.